I am Megan, and I'm in Ontario, Canada, and I'm going to just introduce a little bit of the diabetes and exercise panel. This is a lovely group of athletes living with type 1 diabetes. We're going to hear some of their stories and, just be chatting in the background. If you have any questions or discussion, please, we always encourage you to do that. Rob is going to kind of introduce his crew a little bit more, and good luck. Okay, have fun.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, guys. I see all the participants. Welcome this morning or sort of late morning if you're on the East Coast. This is the Diabetes and Exercise Panel. I am Rob Howe, and I guess I'll introduce who I am a little bit. I'm the moderator on Instagram. I'm Rob Howe 21. I've had type 1 for 15 years, and I wear a Medtronic 670G hybrid closed loop system. My claim to fame, I guess, is I used to be a former professional and collegiate basketball player. So I'm going to add some of my commentary to try to keep up with the amazing panelists that we have here today. I'm the founder of Diabetics Doing Things. There's a podcasting community. It's sort of my intro to the diabetes social media and online community. I'm on the Beyond Type 1 Leadership Council, and I'm currently loving being a Peloton bro. So if you guys are Peloton users out there, I'm also Rob Howe 21 on Peloton. That's sort of the extent of my athletic endeavors these days. And I decided to put a quote that I really love, and I put here, I only work out to wear designer. I'm just trying to make sure I can fit in the clothes that I like. So that's my sort of lens for everything athletic these days. I'd love to introduce you to our awesome panelists. So I'd like to give them a chance to introduce themselves, and I'd love to start with Lauren. Let's go from left to right.
Hi, I'm Lauren Salko. I live in Park City, Utah. I have type 1 diabetes. I am a professional skier. I race a discipline called ski cross. And yeah, I'm on Tandem T-Slim X2 with Control IQ, and I have a diabetic alert dog named Silas.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate. I am from Maine. I'm a professional track and field athlete. I was diagnosed with type 1 when I was 10, and I'm on the Omnipod and Dexcom.
And I believe, I want to check to see if BJ is here yet. If she's not here in the room, I know she's having technical difficulties this morning, so hopefully she'll be able to join us once she's able to get connected. Otherwise, Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't want to skip over BJ just in case, but my name is Matt Vande. I was a rower in college. I didn't even know what rowing was when I first joined, but it's a super fun sport that no one really talks about. And now I am a personal trainer, and I continue my active lifestyle through that.
Great, and we have some awesome questions that we sort of have pre-discussions about for our athletes and panelists. But also I want to encourage you guys to use the question box on Zoom, and we are going to go to the question box at the end of our presentation and review your questions. So if you have any questions throughout, we will take some time at the end of the session to make sure that we address those. And I guess since BJ is not here yet, if there's anything that I can contribute on athletically, I will do my best to fill in the gaps there as well. So bear with me, panelists and attendees. Cool. So question one, if you guys are ready, I feel like we're getting ready. We got some good feedback here, and a few more people are trickling in. What is your top diabetes tip for your sport? And I know you guys obviously play a variety of different sports. So I guess we'll just continue to start with Lauren, and I promise that we'll start with Matt on the next one so that we can keep moving. And Kate, you have like the best position. You get to like be in the middle the whole time, unless there's something you want to lead on. So Lauren, go ahead and take it away. What's the top diabetes tip for your sport?
For my sport, I think my top diabetes tip. So the way ski cross works is it's rounds of heats, and you really can't delay heat because other people are in it, and we're on a TV schedule if it's World Cup. So my best suggestion is to really over focus on diabetes as you lead into a heat so that you don't end up being low when you're supposed to race. So that's only happened to me one time, fortunately, but I guess that would be my biggest tip, but that one's fairly obvious. So my second biggest tip would be to communicate with those around you what's going on. I'm really open with my coaches about my type 1, and they follow me on Share, so they can help me keep an eye on it, both when we're competing and just in general. And so that would be my biggest tip. My teammates also all know and are very helpful. So just, letting everybody know how they can help you.
So I'm a long jumper, and with long jump, and I think just all the events with track, everything's always changing. Like there's different flights for long jump. So there's not always a set time of when I'm going to be jumping. And that can make it difficult when you're trying to stay on top of blood sugar. So I think I would say the top tip would be just to do the best you can to stay on top of your blood sugar, since everything is changing. And I think what's important is just adapting to those changes and not getting too stressed out, because that can just, increase the adrenaline and bring your blood sugars right up. I think there's always going to be ups and downs, but it's like learning from those experiences that's important.
So my sport being a little bit different with rowing, we are out in the middle of the bay with nothing around us for a long distance. So my top tip would be to take sugar with you, because you don't want to get stuck in the middle of the bay like I did, having a low and have to have your team row you back in and feel like the weak link for the day, because that's embarrassing and dangerous. So definitely bring sugar with you.
Yeah, you don't want to have to fish out of the bay to try to find carbs. I feel like that's probably a losing battle. I'd say my tip as well, and my sport these days is basically just recreational athletics. So I would say that just understand that most people, without diabetes don't exercise every day, especially in the US. Like we have, a pandemic of inactivity and obesity. And so it's hard to get to the gym or to get to do your sport or to go hit your miles or to do your boot camp exercise. It's difficult, and acknowledging that is okay. Then you throw diabetes in the mix and it can get even more challenging. So I'd make sure to, soften your edges a little bit towards yourself and prepare for, highs and lows. Make sure you have all of your diabetes treatment and your low treatments nearby to try to help you in case something does go up or down. All right, so let's go to the next question here. Matt, we're going to start with you. What is something diabetes related you had to overcome in your sport? And feel free to dig in a little bit. We have a little bit of time. I'd love to hear some actual stories of, Matt, you already mentioned kind of being out on the bay. Very difficult, like psychosocial as well, dealing with your teammates and coaches. Tell us about something diabetes related you had to overcome.
So obviously there was that low in the middle of the bay where they had to actually row me back in. I was irresponsible in the beginning, didn't take care of myself, didn't take sugar with me. And thankfully there was another type 1 on the team, and I was diagnosed in college. So it was completely new to me. He had a juice box on him. He was like, oh my gosh, take mine, you fool, right? It's like, here you go. But as far as something that I had to overcome, I think it was my own view of myself, thinking that I was the weak link just because I had diabetes. And it was really difficult for me to accept that in the beginning and then move past and be like, no, you're still strong, you're still capable, you're still able to do these things. And I think seeing diabetes as a weakness in the beginning and then learning over years that it doesn't have to be a weakness and it isn't a weakness. You just got to take care of it.
So one thing that I've had to overcome is when I was in high school, I didn't have a CGM at this point. I was just manually checking my blood sugars. I was on my way to a track meet and I checked my blood sugar pretty last minute in the bus when I was almost there. And my blood sugar was extremely high. I think it was in the 300s. So I gave a ton of insulin, tried to bring it down as quick as I could. And I was warming up for my events, and all of a sudden I had a really, really low blood sugar, and it wouldn't go up no matter what I did. And I think that when I took blood sugar on the bus, it wasn't correct. I actually think my blood sugar was much lower than 300 because it dropped so fast. And I was getting ready for long jump. I was about to do my first jump, and it was at one of the conference championships meet, so it was a pretty big competition, and I had a really bad calf cramp, and I couldn't compete the whole rest of the competition, and I was absolutely devastated. But that really just taught me that I needed to stay on top of my blood sugars. I couldn't be checking my blood sugar last minute. I needed to prepare way ahead of time, from the time I woke up, even the night before. I had to just stay on top of everything. So it was definitely a learning experience for me, and I've never had an experience like that since. So I think I had to go through that in order to learn from it and be better.
So one thing that I've had to overcome diabetes related in my sport is that my blood sugar drops low when I get cold. And since I'm a skier, that does happen pretty frequently. So it's always happened, but I actually started noticing it a lot more this year. So I had to work with my coach on how we were gonna prevent me from going low when I was cold. So at the beginning of the season, we were training in Alberta at a location called Red Deer, which is, it's just like in the middle of nowhere, Alberta, and it is very cold. And I started to go low right after a training run. And so I told one of my teammates, I said, I'm going in, can you grab my backpack? Like, it's up at the start. And I went straight into the lodge. Now I was low, and it didn't occur to me that since my backpack was up at the start, that meant the snacks were also up at the start. In my low brain, the snacks were inside, even though I knew the backpack was up top. So I came inside and there was no food, and I didn't have any cash on me. So I went upstairs to the cafeteria, looking for something. And I found one of the boys who was sitting inside because he had hit his head. And I was like, I know you hit your head, but can I just have some money, please? Because my blood sugar's low and I'm really hungry and I don't know. And he gave me a couple dollars, and I had the best cinnamon roll that I've literally ever had because I was low, and it was just amazing. Came downstairs, was still low, and my teammate came in without my backpack. And she tried to explain to me that somebody else was bringing it, but in my low brain, I could not even understand what she was saying. And I just started bawling uncontrollably in the middle of the ski lodge, which prompted all my teammates to come run up to me and be like, oh my gosh, it's okay. It's coming. The backpack is coming. It's coming. And so after that, we had to change my breakfast so that I was having actually way more carbs at breakfast and more protein as well to try and combat that. And then also, as soon as my blood sugar starts to drop, if at all possible, I have to go in and warm back up. Because when I get cold, I think my body is just working really hard to keep me warm, and it causes my blood sugar to just drop really quickly. And so if we can stop that early enough, I can go in for just a couple minutes and have a snack and warm up a little bit. I'm able to go back in. Whereas if I try to push through it, even if I'm taking in carbs, then I'll go low and it'll end up being a much longer event for me. And then I don't feel well. I can't drive the van home. It turns into a big process. So that's one thing I've had to overcome for sure.
And I want to ask a follow-up to you guys as well on this one. When you're competing, and especially in a race or a meet, I think all of you, obviously, there are competition days versus practice days, obviously. Talk a little bit about how, diabetes affects you mentally when you've kind of done everything that you can and you're still having to overcome this sort of diabetes hurdle. Talk a little bit about that mental strain kind of before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, so for me, I think one thing that I've worked really hard to do, both in sport and with diabetes, is to focus on the process rather than the outcome. So ski cross is a really perfect example. You can be having the best day of your entire life, skiing the best that you've ever skied, and someone that you're racing against can crash into you and you're out. It doesn't matter that it wasn't your fault. It doesn't matter that you were skiing super well. You're out of the race that day. So diabetes is very similar. You can make all the right choices and do what you're supposed to be doing, and you can still end up with a blood sugar that you're not happy about. And so I really try to focus on the process, which would be making sure I check my blood sugar, making sure I'm eating a meal that's going to set me up for success, making sure I'm getting enough sleep. I'm doing everything that I can do to try to stack the deck in my favor. And then if the results aren't what I wanted, that's just bad luck, right? If you have a good process and a bad outcome, it's bad luck. If you have a bad process and a good outcome, it's dumb luck. And so that's kind of the way that I look at that, is if you can focus on the process and have process-oriented goals, you're going to have a much better time diabetes-wise and just sport-wise in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Lauren. It's a process. So for me, I'm definitely making sure that I'm preparing well ahead of time, planning out meals, checking my blood sugars all the time so that when I'm in the moment, I don't have to stress about it. Because if I'm in the moment and I'm hearing beeping in the background, knowing my blood sugar is high or low, then it's just added stress, and it's just not good, and it doesn't help my competitions at all. So if I'm doing what I can beforehand so I don't have to stress in the moment, then I feel a lot more at ease when I'm competing.
I got to piggyback on the process because, yeah, man, consistency is an easy way to limit variables. If you find a meal that works, if you find a routine that works, use it, But for me, it's also kind of that numbers game, right? Of trying to not feel like, to not get it down on yourself when you see those bad numbers, and ask myself the question, what can I do moving forward? Like, yeah, I feel crummy right now with high blood sugar, low blood sugar, but I had to work past getting down on myself and just ask the question, what can I do? Matt, come on, what can you do right now? Take insulin or eat sugar, make a choice, and then move forward. So for me, it was battling the mental health or mental struggles with that, with just a real data-driven question. What can you do?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for those really thoughtful responses, and I appreciate you guys bearing with me on the follow-ups. One thing I don't like to do is stick exactly to a plan, so that's how it works when you're on a Rob Howe panel. Cool. How do you prepare for different types of events? And I think specifically practice and training versus competition and race day. Those are very different. For me, it was basketball practice versus game day. So how do you guys prepare for those different types of events? And we'll start with Matt on this one.
Cool. So, practice versus competition days, they can differ vastly. Adrenaline rushes, and you're trying harder a lot of times, even though we don't like to think we are. That competition, it drives you. So for most people, what I've noticed, and for myself especially, I start to see a rise. And initially it's like, okay, cool, I'm safe, I'm not going to go low. But eventually you see it starts to spike and you're going over 200, 300, whatever it is. And so for me, practice, nothing really changes. But if I have a routine that I can stick to for competition day, then that's going to help me a lot. Back before Control IQ, I used to be able to set temp basals. Now Control IQ kind of helps out with that because I'm on the Tandem pump as well. But I would say now, since I don't row anymore, unfortunately, it's a very expensive sport to do it on your own. I tried to be a firefighter for a couple of years, and they have some pretty intense physical testing, and that would cause my blood sugar to rise. So it was a matter of temp basals and aiming for a good starting blood sugar. That was the best strategy that I could use, is starting at a good place.
For me, it's difficult because training and competitions are very different, and my blood sugars are very different as well. So for training, my blood sugars always tend to go low, and I struggled with that for a really long time, trying to figure out what to do. I used to eat right before I trained, but then it would just spike up and go right back down again. I used to try setting a temp basal right before, and that didn't really work either. So what I learned is that I had to set a temp basal like an hour and a half before my training sessions. And I would keep that temp basal throughout the whole entire session, and sometimes even have like a small snack as well. And that completely prevented my lows every single time that I trained. So that's kind of my routine going into my training sessions. But when I compete, it's completely different because I have a lot of adrenaline, and that just brings my blood sugars up. But the hard thing is it doesn't just bring it up immediately. It's once my competition starts, and sometimes even in the middle of the competition. So I could be getting ready, all prepared, blood sugars are great, and then all of a sudden they just spike up to 300 30 minutes into the competition. And that's scary for me because I don't always feel comfortable giving insulin before the competition so my blood sugars are good. So that's something that I'm still trying to work with, but I started setting temp basals to increase the insulin, and that's definitely helped a lot, but I'm definitely still learning how to handle that. So
Yeah, and Kate, I love that you talked about still learning and still being a student. I think like sometimes we'll look at athletes like you guys at your caliber and we'll say, man, if I could only just get my blood sugars in range, like maybe I could do, you know, what Kate or Lauren or Matt are doing. And I think it's super cool to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and be like, you know what, not every day is perfect and I'm still trying to figure it out. And some days are better than others. So thank you for that.
yeah.
So one of the challenges that I have in training especially is a lot of times I don't know what the training day holds until we're in the midst of it. So we have official training days and unofficial training days, but regardless, a lot of times I don't see the course until right before we start training on it. We do what's called an inspection and then we train on it. And so I might not realize that the start is going to be something that I'm going to really struggle with, the start section, and I'm going to need a lot of training on that, which oftentimes means hiking it. So skiing like just 5 seconds down the start and then hiking back up the hill and doing it right over again. And that, as you could imagine, would cause me to have low blood sugars. And even on days when we're supposed to be running full track, if somebody crashes halfway down, a lot of times they will say, okay, no full track runs now because we have to deal with this, but you can pull starts. And since we're only given, you know, sometimes two unofficial training days, 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half, you're trying to get in as much skiing as you can in that hour and a half so that you are as prepared as possible when you have to run your time trial or your first heat. So that's something I've struggled with. I also have a hard time with adrenaline. And I personally have learned that I can't really bolus or increase my basal rate for adrenaline because it comes down on its own. Another challenge I have with ski cross is you don't know how long your day is going to be. It's possible if you're at a race and they go to the round of 32 that I'm out in the first round and my day lasted like one inspection run, one training run, and one race run. But if you make it all the way to the finals, you could be out there for way longer. So there's a lot that goes into play there. So I tend to just take what the day gives me, not really bolus for adrenaline, because I'll just come back down on my own and I don't want to go low. But yeah, it definitely keeps me on my toes. And I try to ask the coaches as much as they know, like, did they say that we can do start training? Did they not say? Did they know start training? How many full runs do you want me to take? What are you thinking before we get out there so that I don't have to worry so much about it?
Awesome. Thank you guys. And I think, you know, a consistent theme has been, you know, things like adrenaline and things like steady state cardio, you know, affect your blood sugar, you know, with schedules that are unpredictable. You know, you're sort of just having to take it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 meet at a time. For me, I had to change. I guess one of my best skills as a basketball player was that I would just fill my heart with rage and just like the guy from 300, just like I filled my heart with hate. And that was like part of my process. And so I had to change that. I actually had to stop listening to such like hardcore music before games because I would go from like fasting blood sugar of 80 to 400 in 30 minutes and then come crashing down if I bolus during the game. So yeah, changing your process sometimes is not always diabetes related. Sometimes you just got to switch out, you know, metal for Enya. And that's just part of the process.
I've actually had to do that not for diabetes reasons, but because when I get too hyped, my like form goes out the window. I just get like really aggressive, but like don't think things through, and my turns end up not being very good, so they're not very fast. And so I have to like calm down in the start. It was really interesting. If anyone else is interested, I have done a lot of reading in terms of like sports performance, and a book I really liked is called Mind Gym. And they talk about like that sweet spot where like your heart rate is in a place where you're able to perform, because really anxiety is just your body fight or flight response, right? And so you can totally use that to your advantage. But if you get too amped up and your heart rate is too high, it's going to be really hard for you. So it's getting yourself to that like sweet spot where your heart rate is high enough that you can perform, but low enough that you can focus and do it to the best of your ability.
Could not recommend Mind Gym more. There's a story there about Bo Jackson just deciding he was going to hit the cycle and then just did it. Pretty amazing. Anyway, Lauren and I could teach our masterclass on mental preparation another time.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Okay, moving on to the next question. And we'll keep it on Lauren for this one. How do you manage food? I think food is obviously so tightly knit towards a life with diabetes. But specifically for you guys, like day of competition, pre and post workout, during exercise, do you have any favorite resources that you could recommend? Really just looking for your insights on how you think about and manage food.
Yeah, so I am a person that likes to stick to a routine in general, so it comes very naturally to me to eat the same foods very frequently. When we're on the road, I tend to try to eat the same foods as well. When we're in Europe, I eat a lot of schnitzel because I really like schnitzel and I've learned how to bolus very well for it. And I get teased a lot by my teammates because I do tend to have a fairly limited diet. I also really do not like vegetables. So I do my best to hide them in my food. So I have a lot of smoothies when I'm at home that have, hidden spinach in them. But I try to eat the same food all the time. So like a normal breakfast for me on a training day or a race day, either at home or on the road, is oatmeal with some peanut butter in it, because I find that it's got a good balance of carbs and fats and proteins. And I try to make sure that I have, some kind of protein bar in my pocket all the time, because the chairlift is a great time to eat things if you're worried that you're going to go low. But yeah, I also meal prep when I'm home. I tend to make like 2 dinner meals a week and just make it in the crock pot and the Instant Pot. I do it on Sundays and then I freeze them, and so that they're really easy, because otherwise I live alone and I have a tendency to try to eat out or to get takeout a lot, because it's hard to make a meal for one when you're living alone. So that's kind of how I combat that.
So for me, I definitely like to stick to a routine as well, but I have celiac disease, so it's a little bit more difficult to stick to a routine with celiac. It's not really hard if I'm at home, because then I can go and shop for what I want and make what I want and stick to that routine. But all of my competitions aren't close to home. They're either in Europe or very far away from Maine, because Maine tends to be cold and track needs to be somewhere warm. So it's hard traveling, because I need to go to the store, figure out what I can and can't eat, and prepare for all of my competitions. But it's not very hard after I've done it so many times, because then I know on the road what I usually can and can't eat. So I can go to the store looking for certain things that I've had in the past, and it's just really important for me to plan ahead, because if I don't, then I might not have the food that I need, or not enough food. So I need to think of when my competitions are, and then kind of go backwards from there and think, okay, I need to eat 3 hours before my competition. So I need to make lunch at this time and eat breakfast at this time and go shopping at this time. So it's just a schedule that I need to stick to. But luckily I've done it so many times that I don't mind doing it, and I like sticking to a routine anyway. So it's actually kind of fun for me in a sense.
So it seems that we all have a few things in common. I love routines as well, which is a complete opposite of what I was 5 years ago. But I like just waking up and knowing what I'm going to eat, not having to make any choices. It's kind of nice, and especially if they're going to treat my blood sugars nicely. But as far as managing food, if I know what type of exercise I'm doing, then I can plan my meals out according to that. For example, if it's weightlifting, I know it's going to rise a little bit, or if it's running, I know it might drop a little bit. Planning out different types of meals with different carbs, fats, or proteins. If I want a delayed rise for stability, if I want it just to go up, come down, different strategies there. But as far as my own personal favorite, I like eating a good mix of carbs with complex carbs. And like Lauren said too, I eat the same thing a lot. I try to hide my veggies in there because they're not always the most fun, but you need them. They're full of micronutrients. But I would say that when I was getting my personal training start way back when, one thing that stuck out to me was for non-diabetics, you're supposed to wait 90 minutes after eating because your body is still digesting the food. And for us as diabetics, we have insulin on board to worry about as well. So as far as meals and food beforehand, I have a rule that I follow for myself, if I can, where I wait at least 2 hours after eating. So I minimize the insulin on board, and I'm not worried about getting a stomach ache or feeling nauseous. So during my workout, I can focus on the workout and not have to worry about crashing blood sugars because I forgot about the extra 3 or 4 units I still have on board. So for me, that's been a huge strategy, was just making that simple rule. Wait until you have less insulin on board, then go crazy and enjoy the workout.
Great. I believe we have a question on food in the Q&A. I actually can't, I'm clicking it, I can't see it. So Megan, would you mind putting that in the chat so we can see the question?
Well, you know what? I can just ask it. There's a question specifically for Katie. As a fellow celiac, what are your go-to items you try to find in the stores to properly fuel when in those different cities or countries? So maybe just talking about some of the go-tos would be great to hear.
Yeah, so I can always count on fruits and veggies because those are gluten-free. So I always just get a ton of that. Usually I'm looking for like gluten-free bread or rice, beans, eggs, a source of protein. So those are usually my go-to options. And I'm also a big oatmeal lover. So I'll always look for some gluten-free oatmeal as well, usually mix in some fruit or some Greek yogurt. So those are my go-to things.
Awesome. I also would echo what Matt said. I feel like I see a lot of myself in all of your answers. So loving routine, like the same foods, like, you know what food does, like, taking a lot of those extra like variables out of it. We have another question as well, but before, I also want to address people who may not be competitive athletes at this stage in their life, but maybe have to travel a lot for work, which is something that I relate to. And a tactic that I picked up from a non-athlete, but an entrepreneur guy that I follow. Whenever he would travel for work for more than 2 days and stay in a hotel, and maybe not in a city where he was going to go out to dinner a lot or whatever, he would pre-order groceries to his hotel so that he could have breakfast and lunch at least back in that routine mindset. So you don't really have to think about where you're going to get food or how to get things that you like. So I'd recommend that as well. I've tried it a few times for longer business trips, and it's been really helpful. We also have a question, and I think we have a little bit about supplements later, but I think it's a good time to talk about it. Any supplements that you guys use or like, and specifically related to your T1D and maintaining performance?
Yeah, so related to T1D, like I said, I try to do a lot of smoothies because it's an easy way for me to hide those leafy greens in my diet. But I make sure that I add protein powder to the smoothie, not just for athletic performance, but because it helps with the spike. So my smoothies are normally a lot of berries and bananas, and so they're fairly high carb. And so when I add some protein to it, it definitely seems to help. I personally really like Vital Protein's collagen protein because it's flavorless, and so it doesn't like affect everything. I also take a lot of glutamine, and I don't think it seems to have any effect diabetes wise, but it helps support joint health, which I really appreciate. Being a skier, my knees take quite a beating. So that's, I guess, it. And I guess one more thing I wanted to add about traveling and diet is I bring a small food scale with me when I travel, so that if I'm just unsure of portion sizes or anything, I can actually weigh the food. I don't use it all the time, but it's definitely helpful if it's something new that you haven't tried before, or sometimes in another country, if they use a metric that I'm not used to, it'll say it in like grams, how much to eat. And I don't know what, like a certain number of grams of rice looks like. Like that doesn't occur to me. And so it's really helpful for me to bring that tiny little food scale.
So I would say I have a similar strategy with the food scale. I actually bring measuring cups with me when I travel, which is a goofy thing. If you don't know why you're doing it, people are super confused. And it's super helpful though, right? Where you get to figure out how many carbs you're actually eating. But as far as supplements go, I like weight training now. And so I try to maximize my muscle growth. And so I use BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. And I actually just tried a new one yesterday from a guy who is type 1 and he makes them called type 0. Oh my gosh, it tastes like candy. So I use those. I do whey protein as well. Mine is unflavored completely, which a lot of people hate, but I love it because I don't have to bolus for it. And I just go ahead and drink it after my workouts. I'm already trending a tiny bit down, so the protein keeps it nice and stable. And I think it's like 2 carbs, so that's fantastic. I take vitamin D and a multivitamin just for overall health. And I think it's important to make sure we're getting those micronutrients. I have a supplement called Ukon that's anti-inflammatory, has a lot of turmeric in it. I think that's really important for us as well. And yeah, and as far as the scale and the cups go, a fantastic resource. Since the last question asked about resources, and I totally forgot to answer that part. I use MyFitnessPal when I'm lost as to like how many carbs are in things. Every once in a while it's off. Like I looked up a burrito and it said like 180 carbs and I was like, there's no way. And then I Googled it and the average was like 100. So it's like, okay, we're gonna go with 100. But they give you the option to switch up the measuring type. So it's grams, ounces, serving size, or 1 cup, half cup. That way you can figure it out wherever you're at. And it's really easy to figure out how many carbs are in it if you have either a scale or measuring cups. Yeah, even if you're eating out, they have most of the restaurants on there, which is fantastic. So that's kind of my little hack for figuring out carbs on the go.
Yeah, I use macro stacks for kind of the same thing. I have a nutritionist that I work with, and she helped me figure out like what my exact macros should be. And I try really hard. The cool thing about macro stacks is too, if you're missing a certain, if you get to dinner, let's say, and you're missing some of your macros, you can click like pick a meal for me, and it will help you figure out like what kind of meal would solve your macro deficits, which is really helpful. And you can put in the restaurant too. So like if you're at Olive Garden, you can like put in like, I need something to fill these macros. I'm at Olive Garden, and it'll like pick something on the menu at Olive Garden that will help fill those macros, which is very helpful.
I'm gonna go download that right now.
Yeah, really good.
So I take magnesium and vitamin D. So I usually take my magnesium at night before bed, and it's like a dissolvable magnesium. It's actually delicious because it's like flavored. It's either like lemon or orange, and I love it. It tastes so good. So I usually have it before bed. Sometimes I have trouble sleeping, and I found that it actually helps me sleep better. So I love that. And then I'm also a big smoothie fan as well. And I usually add peanut butter to my smoothies and protein. And I love banana smoothies. So that's my go-to smoothie for sure.
Yeah, I heard a lot of you guys have mentioned protein. You have mentioned supplements. I like to consider myself a sort of laboratory of sorts to see. I'm just, if I'm going to recommend something to anyone, I want to make sure that I have like pretty extensive experience with it. At the base level, though, the things that I use the most, I love a pre-workout, like a nitrous oxide, supplement, just to kind of get me out of work mode into gym mode. And Matt mentioned type 0. John Jensen, a fellow type 1, developed the formula and founded that company. And it's really good. It doesn't have caffeine. So now that I'm old, I don't have to like stay up all night after I work out, which is good. Back in the day, I could drink like a black powder NO Explode at 7 p.m. and still fall asleep. But nowadays, any amount of caffeine after 4 p.m. keeps me up all night. So it's good. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. I work with them. So I'll put my like discount code in there, but I don't get paid from that. That's just so you guys can get like 20% off, I think. So I'll put that in the chat. It's very good. I also like Ascent protein. I was laughing at everybody at Matt's like taking flavorless protein, because back when I was in high school and college, like the protein like technology was really rudimentary, and all of it tasted like concrete, and it was just awful. So now they have like 0 carb, like 50 grams of protein serving, like amazingly mixable with water protein that tastes really good. And I like Ascent protein. It has like no carbs and it tastes really good. And then as far as the supplements go, I think like I recommend magnesium, chelated magnesium. Also, there's like 7 different kinds of magnesium that are all great. I went through a period where I tested a bunch of probiotics. I took like 19 probiotics a day. I can tell you that there's not much of a difference between taking 1 and 19. So that's what that research paid for. And then on the other side is like also alpha lipoic acid, vitamin D. Most athletes, it's interesting, like a very high percentage of athletes have vitamin D deficiency. So I think it's always a good thing to take. The tricky part is I have hypothyroidism, so I have to take like Synthroid every morning, levothyroxine, and you can't take that with other supplements. So I was like scheduling times in the day to take supplements. That's a really painful existence. I don't recommend it. So yeah, pre-workout protein, that's kind of what I go with.
Yeah, so one thing I guess I could also recommend is that I take something called Total Daily Human from Onnit, which is nice because
Highly recommend that.
Yeah, I love Onnit. So everything I take has to essentially be batch tested because I'm in the registered testing pool. So like I get tested very frequently. In fact, I got tested this morning the first time since like the whole COVID thing started. They came today. So I make sure everything is batch tested, and that's still not a guarantee that there's not going to be anything wonky in there, but I really do trust Onnit and their Total Daily Human. I can't tell you everything in it because there's like a ton of things in it, but it comes in a packet and has everything you should take. So you don't have to go to the store and try to like figure out how like this bottle and like try to figure out exactly what you need. And I also like their pre-workout, and pretty much most of the products they make, they also make a melatonin spray, like mouth spray, which is nice, and a vitamin D mouth spray, which is nice. And then one thing that I hadn't mentioned is I am like a huge proponent of CBD. Again, it's something you need to do research on and make sure that it's coming from a source that you trust. Our rules about THC are fairly lax now, so there's not as much risk of having like trace amounts of THC for me, but I use Beam CBD and it's formulated for athletes, and I really like it. And I don't know if it's a placebo effect or not, but I can definitely see a difference in my recovery when I take CBD. So that's just another option out there. And if you're fearful about taking CBD, I can tell you it does not make you feel high or anything like that. That's one of the questions I like pretty much always get. But it definitely helps me with recovery, especially.
Awesome. I actually also took Total Daily Human for a while. Really loved it. It's nice to just open one packet and take everything you need.
Well, and I was fearful it would upset my stomach, but I didn't have that problem. So it's a good option for people.
We also got a question about what was the brand of CBD again?
I'll type it in the chat, but it's Beam. Hint, if you put stuff in your cart and then leave the website, they will come back with a discount code. So go ahead and do that.
Okay, let's move on to, we have our last question on the slide here, but then I have one more from the attendees. So if you have any other questions you want to ask, we still have a little bit of time, about 15 minutes left. So if you have any questions, be sure to get those in. Now, if you could give yourself your younger self, one piece of advice related to diabetes and sport, what would it be? And we'll start with Matt on this one.
All right, my younger self. So I've had type 1 for about 10 years. So I was 19 when I was first diagnosed, which is a dangerous time to be diagnosed, especially as a male, I think, because I thought I was just undefeatable and nothing was going to change and the diabetes couldn't take me down. So I didn't take care of it very well. I was living in ignorance. So I would tell myself that taking care of your diabetes doesn't make you weaker. If anything, it makes you stronger. It improves endurance when you take care of your blood sugars, your strength, your mindset, your drive. Taking care of it is not only going to guarantee you a better life in the long run, but it's going to help your performance in the sport as well. So I think it would be simply start taking care of yourself now. Don't wait years to start.
I think for me, I was diagnosed at 10 years old, and I actually attribute diabetes to having to the success that I've had today, because I think being diagnosed at such a young age, I had to work really hard to regulate my blood sugars. I had to do it all on my own. I had to count my carbs and do everything. And I didn't really want a lot of help from people. I kind of wanted to do it all on my own. I didn't want my parents looking over my shoulder, and they're actually really good with that. It was a good balance with them. So I was very motivated, actually, and sometimes I check my blood sugars too much. But one thing that I felt was, I think a lot of people expected me to be perfect and control it perfectly. And if I wasn't, then I was doing a bad job. Sometimes I felt like that going to the doctors, where they'd say, oh, you're doing this wrong. Sometimes they actually told me to stop checking it too much. Sometimes they told me to check it more. I just felt a lot of pressure from a lot of people. And I think what I would say to my younger self and any other kids that have diabetes is that you can't be perfect. There's going to be struggles. There's going to be ups and downs, but that's okay. That's completely normal. Every type 1 diabetic out there struggles every single day of their lives. So there's no way that you can get it perfect. And it's just about doing the best you can and learning every day from your highs and lows, and getting better and being the best you can be and doing the best you can do.
So I guess I would say 2 things. Don't overthink it. Diabetes is important, but it's, having a blood sugar that you weren't expecting or aren't happy about isn't the end of the world. So don't overthink it, and focus on what you can control, because there are so many things that you just can't control. And this is something like that I've been working on a lot recently because of COVID-19 too, is we don't know what sport is going to look like next year, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to compete. It may have changed my chances of getting to go to the games because of the timing of everything. And so it's just, but those are things I can't control. I've done everything I can do. And so there's a lot of relief in just focusing on what you can control, both in sports and diabetes and just life, because you can spend, my mom used to say, like, don't punish yourself twice by worrying, because you punish yourself worrying about it, and then you punish yourself again, like then you're hurting again when the thing that you're worried about happens, right? So if you can't control it, just like let it go. And if it happens, like, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and we'll deal with it. If your blood sugar ends up being high, like, we'll deal with it. If it's low, we'll deal with it. The world's not going to end. But like, conserve that mental energy on focusing on the things you can control. So like, you can control what you put into your body. You can control what you're doing to prepare for your event. You can control, if you are checking your blood sugar, but you can't control, hormones. You can't control, like, any of those, like the direction the wind blows and that causing your blood sugar to go up a little bit. There's like so many things that you just can't control. So just let those go and focus on what you can and what really matters.
Great advice from everybody. I really appreciate it. I also would give you advice, like one of my high school basketball coaches said this, not related to diabetes, but I think I apply it to that now as well. It's a John Wooden quote, and it's, the will to win is only exceeded by the preparation to win. And if you apply that to diabetes, again, just like maybe we don't get to eat exactly what we want, but we do what we and kind of prioritize what it is we really want, and kind of dig into those things that if we really want to win, what sacrifices are we willing to make? And I think that applies to diabetes as well. So it's not always an easy thing to do, but also don't beat yourself up if it doesn't work on the first try. I think a lot of us would say, like, we've experimented or changed or tried things or had expectations that we thought things were going to go one way, and they for sure have gone others. And I think the real sign of a T1D champion and a champion in general is, are you able to fail and pick yourself back up and try again? and not really listen to that internal monologue or people even trying to pull you down. Is in your heart, continuing to strive. Okay, so let's talk. We have a couple questions here, rapid fire ones. I'd love to know from you guys, and maybe we can just kind of all come off mute and kind of discuss this. Is outside of your coaching staff, who else is on your support team for your individual sports, or was on your support team?
Okay, so I have a strength and conditioning coach. I have my on-snow coaches. We have the people that plan our travel. So they plan like where we're going to stay and the flights that we're going to take. We have a physio who helps us recover and deal with injuries. I consider my medical team part of that team as well, for sure. And they're super helpful. And then we just have like team managers that help us with like the little details, like watching my diabetic alert dog while I'm on the hill and little things like that. So that would be my team other than my coach.
For me, so I train individually with my coach. I'm not on any sort of team. So my coach, he's also like my strength and conditioning coach. And then other than that, I have like my agent who plans everything, plans all the travel. Definitely thankful for that because that would be really difficult to do on my own. And then my family has been huge throughout this. They made a lot of sacrifices for me and they're with me every step of the way. And my dad he loves it. He goes to every single or most of my practices and rakes the pit for me and does all the little things to make it just a little bit easier for me. So that's my support system right there. It's pretty awesome.
When I was rowing, my family was a huge support. When I first got diagnosed, I first got back into rowing. It was my parents. But about a year and a half later, my little sister was diagnosed with type 1, which shattered my world. Honestly, it was more painful for me to watch her be diagnosed than it was for myself. We actually just put a podcast out last week where like we both kind of teared up because it was a very emotional time. But my family was definitely the stronghold that I had. They were very supportive. They had just enough support, but they knew to back off, right? They weren't, overwhelming me with all this support. And I think that was a fantastic thing that they could have done, is just to help me by not being too involved, and giving me that freedom to discover it on my own, to make my own mistakes and be there for me when I needed it. And that was a fantastic thing. And now I'm married. My wife is incredible. She will offer to get me juice when I need it, and she's just there for every step of the way. So family, significant others, I couldn't imagine doing this without them.
100% agree. Okay, moving on to some other questions. Do you guys track your recovery or your workouts with like an Oura ring or sleep or a Fitbit or a Whoop tracker? Just if you do, what do you use and what do you like about it?
So I use Elite HRV to track my recovery. So I put like a heart rate monitor on, and then it gives me my heart rate variability, which I check every morning. It takes like 1 minute, and then it'll tell me my readiness number, and it's a number from 0 to 10, and the best number to be is 10. And if it's out of 10, that's usually between like parasympathetic and sympathetic, like the ideal range that you want to be and ready. So that's really how I track my recovery. And then depending on the number, it'll give me like advice for what I should do. So if it's at like a 6, then I'll say, okay, you need a little bit more rest or you need active recovery. So it's extremely helpful, but I don't ever check it on the day of competitions because I feel like it'll get into my head. So if I'm like super like nervous or pumped up, then it'll be more on the sympathetic side because I have a lot of adrenaline. And then I'll be like, oh no, like my number's off. And then it stresses me out more. So I never check it on the day of competition. I just want to go in there just feeling confident and not worrying about like what my number says.
So I use Whoop, and Rob and I talked actually before this. He also uses Whoop. I'm a huge fan. Pretty much, it also tracks HRV, resting heart rate, respiration rate, and a ton of other metrics. But it tracks your sleep, and then it gives you a recovery score out of 100% and day strain, which I think is out of 22. And it can give you recommendations on how much strain you should have. So today I'm 89% recovered, and I should build to a strain of 14.8. So then I can take that data and look at the workouts that have been planned for me. And so each day I have like 4 to 5 workouts that are planned and I pick the ones based on my recovery. So the goal is to get to that day strain so that I have taken on as much strain as my body could recover for in, one night. So I get the optimal amount of gains for that day. And I like it because it also has a strain coach, so you can start your workout and watch your strain go up and kind of see like how close you are. Should I keep going, or like, was that enough? And you can also have groups. So Rob just invited me to his T1D group. So if anybody else uses Whoop, I'm sure it would be awesome to have a big group of T1Ds on there. It would be really fun.
That would be awesome. Sorry, my dog was really interested in what I was doing up here. We had another question about pump security. So like some of you guys wear tubed pumps, Matt and Lauren in particular. Kate, you can talk about the decision to wear Omnipod as well. How do you guys secure your pumps while working out?
So if you're a girl, your sports bra is like a super good option. If you're not, I will say that Tandem, if you're on the T-Slim, the old clip didn't have this piece of plastic. They now are selling this metal clip separately as well on the website. So that little piece of plastic has helped so much keep it like on my pants. But I keep it in my sports bra most of the time when I'm working out. Other than that, there's like running belts you can get that help a lot.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I think I got lucky. I used the standard clip that came with my pump in the beginning, and it totally works fantastic. Everyone complains about it falling off doing jumping jacks, but to give another option a try, especially for when I was doing firefighting training, I used one called Type 1 Tactical, and that does not budge at all. It clips in your waistband and you can pull as hard as you want. Thing does not move. So if you're looking for something super sturdy, they make some incredible options. But when I'm doing just normal fitness, running around, even hiking or climbing, the standard pump clip seems to work pretty well for me.
I'll add one as well because I agree. Type 1 Tactical, if you want an indestructible pump clip, that is the one. I think it's like made out of like gun holster technology, so it's like built to last. But when I play basketball, it feels like there's a phone in my pocket, and that's just not ideal. So I actually use a brand called Wolico, but Lululemon also has like leggings with like pockets in them and tights. So I'm a leggings stan. So I ran a half marathon with my pump in my tights. I play basketball. I dunk on guys with my pump in my tights, and it doesn't bother me at all. It did the first time I wore it though. It was like really weird because I'd never played with it on, but now I do. So I'm going to I'll put the name of the link in the chat for us. But I guess really we are right about time here. So if you guys would then kind of plug, I know you have your Instagram handles in your like names for this chat, but if you plug where to get in touch with you and where to follow you, I think we can kind of come towards the end of the session.
Hey, I just want to say, everybody, it's like awesome discussion, like both professionally, and this can all help us out like individually, those that aren't professional with this. So thank you so much for your time. So if everybody can put their handles in, that would be great.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm just sitting here awkwardly looking at the screen, but I did want to thank Connected in Motion for having us all here today, and for all the sponsors of these sessions. There's some awesome sessions still to come today, so hopefully you guys have a great rest of your Connected in Motion conference day. So thank all of you guys.
Thank you, Rob, for hosting. It's been a fun experience.
Yeah, thanks guys. It was great.
Thanks again. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.